Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you are new. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into today's video. So as you guys can tell by the title of this video and also by my community post tab that I made just a few days ago, this video will not have any type of nail content, nor will it be focused around nails in any way. I want to focus strictly on informing you guys on this extremely disturbing and disgusting situation that is currently unfolding right before our eyes. And after walking you through the timeline of events from beginning to end, I will try my best to provide you ways to help in the situation from a privileged standpoint, because most of you guys who are watching this are probably in the Western world or maybe are not dealing with what the Palestinians are dealing with in Palestine currently right now. So I will also be providing you with information to help, and I will also be providing you further insight and just talk about it on a deeper level from the perspective of someone who is in a privileged position and who has had to put that privilege aside for the situation. And with that being said, I do just want to disclaim that this video will evoke uncomfortable emotions. I will be digging into violence and just a lot of things that are very difficult to deal with. However, I do advise you to watch this video in its entirety, because this is not something that any of us can afford to not know about in today's climate, because this is not just foreign affairs. This is not just an issue in the Middle East. This is a global crisis, and being ignorant is allowing the exact same thing that is going on currently to come knocking at your door tomorrow. So I advise you to please listen to this and to put your privilege aside for 15 to 30 minutes. But before we jump in, I do want to disclaim a few things. The first being that I do not condone any hateful and or discriminatory speech in regards to this video or any video that I ever produce on my channel. So if you have any hate in your heart for anybody, I do not condone that, and I absolutely condemn that from happening anywhere on my channel. And with that being said, if you have any type of hate for anyone involved in this situation, I would highly recommend unsubscribing. This is not a safe space and or breeding grounds for hateful speech. So if you are not subscribed and you are hateful, do not subscribe. And if you are subscribed and you are hateful, please unsubscribe. Okay? All right. Another thing that I want to mention is that some words will be bleeped out as to not go against community guidelines. So words like genocide, murder, war, etc., etc. So I just want to make sure that I am letting you guys know that these words will be censored. I do understand that there are a lot of frustrations with YouTube censorship, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem as if things are going to change anytime soon. And unfortunately, for educational videos such as these, there isn't really much that we can do. So please forgive me for that. And lastly, I wanted to disclaim that I am not Jewish, nor am I Muslim, and I am also not Palestinian, nor am I Israeli. So I do just want to make that clear that my knowledge on this is very skewed. It's not a personal experience for me. So if there is any information that I have not really explained correctly or respectfully, please feel free to let me know and to give me grace on that, because I'm trying my best to learn about everything through a very skewed perspective. Now, with the disclaimers out of the way, I want to go ahead and jump into it. But before we do, I want to give my deepest condolences to anyone who is watching who has been directly affected by what is going on. I want you to know that not only are we seeing it, but we are paying attention. I want you to know that not only are we hearing you, but we are listening to you. And I just want to make sure that my voice is being put to use. Whether I'm a news anchor or a construction worker, I'm going to use my voice for the better. And I want to make sure that this video also inspires others to speak out and let it be known that we are not in agreement with what is currently happening. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and dive straight into it. So to make sure that I touch every topic that I want to in this video will be split up into 3 sections. The first being that we will talk about the entire timeline from beginning to end. The second chapter, we will be talking about the public perception of what is currently happening in current times. And the third chapter, we will be talking about ways that we can make change, even if it is small. So let's go ahead and get into the first chapter, which is the timeline. Now, a question that a lot of people have been asking is, when exactly did all of this start? Now, a lot of people who have explained what is going on have typically started around 1946 or 1947. However, the timeline that I will be using starts in 1798. So we have a lot of history to go through. So the entire history between Palestine and Israel started in June of 1798 when Napoleon Bonaparte, yes, Napoleon Bonaparte, and his troops set out to conquer the entire upper half of Egypt. Now, I would strongly recommend anyone who is listening to this to actually look into these links and further educate yourself on these events. But in the most basic terms, we can really see here the beginnings of non-religious colonial conquests and invasions. And so in the most basic, understandable terms that I can think of, Napoleon had conquered Egypt, and within the next year, so 1799, he had started campaigning throughout Palestine, in which he was in favor of finding a place for Jewish people to consider their ancestral homeland. So from the very beginning, it is safe to assume that there are major ties to colonization and imperialism from the very beginning. And not only are we talking about that, but we are also talking about the fact that a lot of these people within the Middle East that Napoleon and his troops were quote unquote conquering were deemed as quote unquote barbaric and subpar, subhuman. So there are already issues with racism and superiority complexes that need to be addressed when we are talking about the situation. And so between 1799 and 1946, after Napoleon Bonaparte had already conquered most of Egypt and was trying to go and campaign throughout Palestine, there were a lot of efforts to truly make Palestine the homeland for Jewish people. Or in other words, this was really the beginning of the creation of Israel, and it starts here. And so within these roughly 147 years, we can really see the colonization of Palestine. And so, for example, there were a lot of Zionist settlements that were set up here. There were journalists and stuff writing about the creation of the Jewish state. And a lot of Zionist leaders and supporters in Europe are actually latching onto this endeavor. But even with things kind of going smoothly, of course, Palestinians were not in agreement with this. And so from 1915 and onward, this movement to create the Jewish state really sped up, even despite Palestinian opposition. So much so that a secret agreement was made to split the Middle East between the French and the British. And so by 1917, Palestine becomes a quote-unquote promised homeland for Jewish people, despite Palestinian opposition. And because it seems as if the wishes of the Palestinian people are not being taken into account by the Zionist groups and other leaders who are in agreement with the movement to create the Jewish state, the Jewish people continue to immigrate to Palestine. But of course, the Palestinian people were not going to go out without letting their voices and opinions be heard. In 1929, the AL-BURAQ uprising occurred, which was the first mass protest against Jewish immigration to Palestine. And about 4 years later, after this mass uprising, there was another protest against the immigration of Jewish people to Palestine. And while I am giving you a very generalized idea about what happened between 1798 and now, I do really encourage you to actually look into these links once again and to further educate and learn about what exactly was happening in detail. But back to the topic, the Palestinian people were indeed protesting against this movement. However, Jewish people still continued to immigrate to Palestine, and even so much so that there were Palestinian leaders that were literally killed, and Palestinian people were being attacked by Zionist groups. And not only by Zionist groups, but also by British forces. And eventually, the Zionist groups in Palestine had fully solidified their relationship with the U.S. in 1942. So now let's look into the years between 1947 and 1967. So within this time period, Resolution 181 comes into play. And in the simplest terms, Resolution 181 was a partition plan set up by the UN that would split Palestine into 1, the Jewish state, 2, the Arab state, and 3, the city of Jerusalem. And unfortunately, after this partition plan, the violence really spikes up, and Zionist forces and other groups in support of the colonization of Palestine did not hesitate to hurt the Palestinians. It is also important to mention that after establishing the Jewish state, Arab state, and the city of Jerusalem, over 80% of Palestinians were expelled from what later became the Jewish state, and at least 80% of the land was taken from them. However, amidst all of the violence, Resolution 194 was then passed, which would allow Palestinian refugees to return back to their homes as soon as possible. Now, I find it very interesting how these are called quote unquote resolutions, when in reality, it kind of just feels like it's causing issues for both parties. So I don't know what that's about. And so following this, the armistice agreements were signed in 1949, and these were supposed to help solidify the boundaries between Israel and Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. And these were supposed to, quote unquote, formally end the hostilities between Israel and the surrounding Arab nations such as Jordan, Egypt, Syria, and Lebanon. However, hostilities still existed, and Israel continued to occupy Palestinian territory and kill Palestinians. Even so much so that the UN passed Resolution 242, which would call on Israel to withdraw from Palestinian territory. And so now we enter 1968 between 1992. And during this time period, Israel began to build settlements in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And amidst the building of these settlements and the immigration of Jewish immigrants to these territories, Israel would continue to plague Palestinians with violence, so much so that in 1973, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 338, which called for Israel to once again withdraw and cease fire. It's also important to note that Jewish settlers were allowed to carry weapons under the protection of the Israeli army. And so now we jump to 1974. So in 1974, the Arab League recognized the PLO, or Palestine Liberation Organization, as the sole representative body of the Palestinian people. And this organization sought to liberate not only Palestinians in Palestine, but the Palestinian people of the world. But even despite this, Israel still continued to plague Palestine. For example, thousands of hectares of lands were taken from Palestinian citizens, and when the citizens of Palestine began to protest, they were violently put down. And this would lead to the beginnings of Land Day, which is something that is celebrated every year. And then in 1987, I'm assuming in response to everything that is currently unfolding, the first Intifada is launched. Now, between 1968 and 1992, it seems as if peace is trying to be achieved. However, there are still tensions running very high between Israel and Palestine. And so that would lead us into the modern age of Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So for me, I would say that's about from 1993 to present times. And during this time period, it seems as if there are a lot of attempts at peace between Israel and Palestine, as the PLO and Israel would make agreements in favor of granting Palestine more autonomy over their territory. And I should also mention that these agreements would also require Israeli forces to partially withdraw from Hebron, because it seems as if Israel has an issue with occupying spaces that they shouldn't be in or that they don't belong to. So, yeah. But even despite the efforts for peace, Israel would attack Gaza in the attacks known as Operation Cast Lead, Operation Pillar of Defense, and Operation Protective Edge. Now, these assaults against Palestine were massive and would forever shape the relationship, or lack thereof, between Israel and Palestine. So I'm trying to condense this as best as possible for anyone who does not have TikTok, does not watch the news, or just has no idea what's going on. But I am going to go ahead and jump straight to October of 2023. And this is where we hear about the attack on Israel that was carried out by Hamas, which is a Palestinian militant organization. So at the start of this month, and I believe precisely it was October 7th of 2023, this attack on Israel was carried out by Hamas, and this led to a massive uproar. And within 4 days, there were 1,200 Jewish people dead and about 150 hostages. And many public figures and celebrities and government leaders spoke out in support of Israel. And after this attack, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that Israel was indeed at war. And not long after, thousands of strikes were launched onto the Gaza Strip, killing thousands of Palestinians and destroying dozens of buildings. And from this point on, bombs have been dropping consistently, and even so much that a bomb was recently just dropped on a hospital, which is extremely devastating and should not have happened ever. So it is very important that I mention that Israel had given Palestine sort of an ultimatum, and the Israeli army had demanded that over 1.1 million Palestinian civilians relocate to southern Gaza in about 24 hours with no promises of safe return. And for anyone who was left, they were subject to violence. Now, it has been alleged that Israel purposely wanted to remove the Palestinian people in order to fully target Hamas. However, it has been made very clear that that is not the intentions, as a lot of innocent people have also been tormented and just ruined by this entire situation. And the main reason why I find myself not believing this rhetoric is because not only are they dropping bombs on the people of Palestine, but they are preventing access to food and water and electricity. And these essentials are pretty much almost gone or completely run out. Not to mention, they have no say as to what comes in or out because the entire Gaza Strip is under blockade. So nothing can come in or out without the permission of Israel, because Israel has full control over Gaza at this very moment and has had control over Gaza for decades. So in this situation, we can see that there is an ethnic cleansing occurring as these Palestinians were forced out of their homes and they have no promise of safe return. Not only that, but Israel is trying to punish all of the people of Palestine for the actions of a few. And yes, that is considered collective punishment. And yes, that is a war crime. So with that entire timeline broken down, I think it is finally safe for us to go ahead and talk about the public perception in current times. And I probably am going to get a lot of questions asking why I went through the entire timeline of events. And my answer to that is it is very important to know the context and background information so that you can kind of piece together why we are where we are and where we can go based on how history has played out before us. So I apologize if this feels a lot like a school presentation, but I want to make sure that I'm being very thorough, or as thorough as I can be. But yeah, I just wanted to very quickly mention that. So let's go ahead and look at how this has been perceived by the rest of the world, especially here in the States. So I feel like there's been a lot of discourse between whether people are pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, but I feel like the stance that people are taking are a little bit more nuanced than that. And what I mean by that is there is also another two subgenres of public opinion that have kind of been sparking up, and those are the people who are neutral and the people who decide not to get involved at all. And I really want to touch on those two for this video. And of course, after I kind of walk you through like those two stances in particular, I will kind of give you insight on how I feel about the situation personally. And then we'll go ahead and get into what we can do to help the situation and put a stop to this as best as we possibly can. So first, let's talk about those people who are neutral in the situation. And I'm not even sure how anyone can be neutral in this situation, but let's go ahead and talk about it. So those people who are neutral kind of feel like both Israel and Palestine are both victims of each other, and they are not necessarily picking sides in this situation. And I feel like that is a very not great way to look at things, especially considering how unequal and imbalanced the power is between these two nations. And I think another reason why it's so hard to believe that some people are neutral in this is because Palestine was colonized. As we went through the entire timeline, we saw how Palestine and other Arab nations have been terrorized by British and French forces for land. That's all it was ever about, was land and control and colonization. And so I don't feel like it's possible for both Israel and Palestine to be equal victims of each other. And specifically when referring to the events of the past few weeks, it is not possible for both of them to be equal victims of each other when we have a terrorist group going up against one of the strongest military forces in the world. That is just simply not possible. And I want to be very clear with this. I am in no way condoning the actions of Hamas. I do not believe that anyone should be harmed in this situation. However, I do feel like context needs to be applied so that we can fully understand what exactly is going on so that we can prevent it in the future. I feel like violence amongst anyone is violence amongst everyone. So I am in no way agreeing with Hamas and them terrorizing people in Israel. That is not okay whatsoever. But I do think that context needs to be applied, and people need to understand that when we are talking about Palestine, we are not talking about Hamas, because Hamas is not Palestine and Israel doesn't represent the entire Jewish community. And so I feel like when we are having these conversations, we need to understand that those are very separate, very different entities, right? But what I am also trying to stress is that there's a huge power imbalance between Israel and Hamas, right? So it's not possible to be neutral in this, especially when Palestine has been stripped of all of its power, and most of that power is held by Israel. So now that you have kind of heard my stance on neutrality in the situation, I kind of want to talk about those who are deciding not to get involved at all and to not at least speak out against it, because it's just the excuses that people are saying as to why they're not getting involved is honestly the most selfish things that I've heard in the last few weeks, and it's very heartbreaking. I feel like a lot of people who are not getting involved are saying like, oh, I don't know enough about the situation. Okay, Google. Google is free. Use it. 2, like, oh, my mental health. People are dying. 3, oh, like, I have a lot going on. So does everybody else. There is no excuse to not get involved and to not say anything. And the only people who have the grace, who I am giving the grace to be ignorant in this situation, is children. That is it. The only people who are not obligated to speak about this are children. And I mean that with every fiber of my being. If you have a voice, if you have social medias, if you have the ability to go to protests, if you have 50 cents in your account, you can do something about this. There is no excuse to not take action. And to kind of reiterate what I mentioned earlier on in the video, please step out of your privilege. You got to step out of it, and you have to understand that ignorance is indeed a privilege, especially in a situation where people are dying and you just decide to turn off the TV. You decide to log off of your social media, because I don't know how much I can stress this, but by being ignorant and by ignoring the things that are happening in the rest of the world, you're allowing that to happen to you because you haven't been paying attention and you haven't been speaking out against it. So for anyone who has not gotten involved, for anyone who refuses to look into the situation, you are the problem and I need you to fix it. Now, there is also something that I wanted to mention, and this is a little bit more of a niche subgenre to the opinions of the Gaza genocide. And this is something that really hits home for me as someone who is a person of color. And I feel like I really need to say this because I know that there are a lot of people of color who watch my videos, and I feel like I need to speak directly to my brothers and sisters when I say this. I need you to stop saying that you do not want to get involved. And I also need you to stop bringing up race. I need you to stop bringing up race. Now, normally I am the type of person who can agree that most things in society are the effects of race, whether you want to get into that or not. That is not really what I'm talking about. But I'm very disappointed to say that I have seen a lot of people of color, specifically Black people, say that Palestinians do not like Black people. And that is why they're not getting involved. When there are innocent men, women, and children being bombed, we are turning around and saying that Palestinians do not like Black people, and that is a valid reason as to not get involved. This has never evoked this much shame in me ever. Like, I've never been so ashamed of my people in a very long time, and it just seems as if people are not thinking critically. And I just find it very baffling that a lot of Black people are not drawing connections between the story of Palestinians and the story of Black people. Because, I mean, we have to really sit and think about it. Palestinians and Black people, as well as other people of color, are all victims of colonization. We are all victims of the same thing. There is no way that you can sit here and tell me that our stories are different and that you can't find it in your heart to be compassionate in the situation when the exact same thing happened to your ancestors. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I know I'm probably kind of rambling and putting my emotions too much into this, but This is extremely disappointing. And I'm disappointed if you think this way as a person of color, when your ancestors went through what they went through, you are absolutely shameful. It is shameful to think that you do not understand compassion and that you do not feel empathy at all. And if you think that, I honestly, I need you to get it together and to really sit down with yourself and think critically. So yeah, that's my stance on that. Okay. Now I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on the pro-Israel stance in all of this. And if you guys have social media, I know that you have seen the absurd amount of people who are like celebrities and public figures that have been siding with Israel. And I just want to make something very clear. I have nothing against Jewish people. And I want to reiterate this again. Israel does not represent the Jewish community. And I honestly want to focus on talking about Israel and not Jewish people, because those are two different entities. And yeah, I just want to make that clear. Okay. Now, there are a lot of people who are in favor of Israel and are standing with Israel. And I feel like a lot of that is either one, ignorance, and, a combination of being fooled by propaganda, and two, that is people who benefit from the effects of colonization. And that is something that I will touch on very briefly in just a sec. But I want to go ahead and talk about all of the ignorant celebrities and public figures who have made their stance very much known on social media. So let's get into that. Now, of course, I think it is very safe to say that this situation has made it very clear for us that celebrities do not stand with us, they do not represent us, they do not care about us, and they are not our friends. And if you have not realized that in this situation, I need you to open your eyes, okay? These people do not have our best interest. And I feel like this was a great wake-up call for a lot of people who have very toxic parasocial relationships with public figures and influencers and celebrities. So as you guys have probably seen, there have been posts made by like Kim Kardashian and Kylie Jenner and Justin Bieber. And I believe also Noah Schnapp made a post about it, but I haven't actually checked because I don't follow any of those people. But I have seen the post by Justin Bieber before he deleted it. I did also see the statement that Kim Kardashian made on her Instagram. And what I can say is that a lot of these people who are making these statements have fallen victim to propaganda that has been spewed by Israel, not only by Israel, but also by America. And I feel like we have been very, very much affected by 9/11 and the events that followed 9/11, because ever since then, there has been an anti-Muslim agenda. And ever since then, we have become more and more desensitized to the abuse of Black and brown people. And I feel like the effects of 9/11 are still lingering today. And with that being said, I'm in no way excusing these statements that these public figures and celebrities made. I do think that all of these people are old enough to formulate their own opinion and to actually do research like most normal educated adults do. But, unfortunately, not everyone can be intelligent enough to make their own decisions. However, I am still holding them very much accountable, okay? They need to be held accountable, and I feel like that's really my stance on that. Now, when I'm referring to those who benefit from colonization, I am mostly talking about government officials and the American government as a whole. Let's be honest. America would not exist without colonization. America would not exist without the effects of colonization. So I feel like that really does provide a good reason as to why they would side with the oppressor. Okay, and so with that out of the way, I kind of want to talk about my own stance on this, which I feel like I kind of made clear throughout the video, but I do want to really emphasize that I am pro-Palestine. I am free Palestine all the way, every day, all day, until it is backwards, okay? I am in no way saying that what Hamas has done is validated, but I do not agree with the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of innocent people. And I also do not agree with trying to pin Palestine out to be the bad guy when they have been suffering from colonization, imperialism, and racism since the beginning of this timeline, which was basically in 1800, okay? There is no way that I can side with Israel in a situation where history has told us where we need to stand. We have seen through history when it happened to Africans. We have seen through history what happened to Native Americans. And we are currently seeing through history what is happening to Palestinians. It is the same situation over and over and over again. And if we continue to turn our heads and to ignore situations like this, it's going to keep happening, and eventually you are going to fall victim to it if we don't speak out against it. And so I want to make it very clear that I stand with Palestine. So now let's go ahead and talk about what we can do to help stop the situation and to prevent it from happening again. And the first thing is to put your money where your mouth is. And what I mean by that is stop supporting brands that are supporting the oppressor, okay? And so I mean brands like McDonald's, Starbucks, Disney, Netflix, etc., etc. I will try to leave an entire list of brands that I currently know that are supporting Israel in the description box, if not on the screen. I will try my best to kind of put all of what I can find on the screen for you. But I need you guys to understand that America only cares about money. This is a capitalist nation. This country is ran off of money. And let's be honest, America is just one big corporation. So putting your money where your mouth is and supporting brands that you truly believe will help make a difference is actually going to make a difference in a situation like this. Because again, America only cares about money. And not only that, but I do really want to stress making donations. Donations really do make a huge difference, even if it is like 2 cents. Like, I get it. The economy is under the ground, okay? It's not even just on the ground, it's in the ground. And so I know it's very difficult, but if you have 2-3 cents in your account, put it somewhere where you feel like it can be used for the greater good, because all of that does add up and it does make a difference, especially in a situation where people do not have access to food, water, electricity. They don't even know when or where their next meal is coming from. So please do donate. I will try and find some trusted organizations to donate to, because I don't think you should just be donating and putting your money everywhere. So I will try my best to look into that. The third thing that we can all do is to learn about it and talk about it and spread the stories of those who matter the most in this situation. I understand that not everyone has a platform, not everyone has social media, but if you can at least learn about it and talk about it and make your stance known, that can make a huge, huge, huge impact, because literally within the past few weeks, Israel is realizing that they are losing the war in propaganda. Like, their propaganda is not working. People are standing with Palestine. People are getting out there and protesting. People are on the ground making things go off, okay? So if you can at least talk about it, post a little short video letting your stance be known, trying to do your best to be vocal on the situation, and I promise you that will make the hugest impact. And even for me, like, it's very difficult to talk about something on this platform because, again, I do nails. Like, I don't really talk too much about serious topics. But now is not the time to just continue on with my life as if nothing is going on. I have an obligation as a human being to stand up for other human beings that are being wrongfully treated. And I feel like everyone who is a human should have that sense of humanity within them to make that decision as well. So if you have 5 million followers, or even if you just have like 2, it doesn't matter. Like, speak out, make your stance known. And while we are speaking about speaking out, I think it is very important to actually get out there and find organizers, trusted organizers who are willing to, organize protests and movements, because those are extremely important. Sometimes it's not enough to just say, free Palestine, because really, what is that going to do? Social media has been very impactful in movements such as this, such as the Black Lives Matter movement, such as the Stop Asian Hate movement. But the most change comes from actually being on the ground and making changes. So if you can find protests in your local city or whatever, or if you can organize them yourself, definitely do that, because that definitely does make a change. And lastly, this goes without mentioning, but it is so, so important to vote every single year for every single candidate that you want to represent you. And especially during this time, I need you to look up what your candidates are saying about the situation and decide whether you want that person to represent you or not, because that makes a huge impact on how this country is run and how we operate outside of ourselves. So definitely do vote. Okay, so we went through the timeline, we talked about the public perception, and we talked about some things that we can do to stand against the oppressor. And I feel like this video was very long-winded, and I probably got a little bit too passionate in some areas, but I can't help it. This is a very passionate subject for me. And for most people, like a lot of people are seeing that this is extremely disturbing and disgusting what is happening, and things need to happen in order to change, right? So I apologize if this video is longer than I said it would be, but I wanted to make sure that I was thorough and that I spoke with intention. And I just hope that this video was at least educational, and that you learned a few things, and that maybe you are inspired to speak out, especially, and I say this, I don't say this with disappointment, but I am saying this with love, okay? For all of my people who are a part of creative spaces such as the nail community, if you are a cosmetologist, if you do things that do not typically touch on topics like this, I highly suggest you get out of your comfort zone and speak up about this, because it is not enough for people who already do commentary to speak about it. We need actual, like, normal people talking about this as well. Like, I'm a part of the nail community. I already said this. And if this is your first time watching me, this is not the type of content that I make whatsoever. But I feel like it is my obligation to stand with humanity and to at least make it so that I can inspire change as well. So if you are a part of a niche community on this platform and outside of it, please do speak up as well. And yeah, I do believe that that is all that I wanted to mention. And I just wanted to make sure that I spoke about it. And I'm very nervous to post this video, I will not lie. But I am ready to make my voice heard, you know, and to inspire change. And this is not something that I normally ask for, but this video is important. This is probably the most important video that I would ever make in my entire life. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I really do hope that you are willing to share this video. I don't care about, you know, the likes or anything, but I just want to make sure that this video is seen by people and something can actually happen. You know what I'm saying? So this is probably one of the only times you'll ever see me or hear me asking to share a video, because I think that's, I don't know, I don't like doing that because it's YouTube. YouTube has existed for over a decade. I think people know how to use it at this point. If they want to share the video, they will. But I just kind of want to ask you to share this video with anyone who may not know anything about the situation, anything who is kind of still a little bit confused, anyone who is a part of any creative space that is afraid to speak out against it because of the space that they're in. Please do share it with those people in your life. And I just want to say thank you for watching. If you are still here watching this video, I really do appreciate you, and I'm proud of you for actually listening and being uncomfortable and embracing that uncomfortability, because this is serious, right? So yeah, I am very proud of you for sticking around this long. But I want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this video. If it was even enjoyable, I'm not sure. But I do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.